When you step inside this unassuming warehouse in Hyattsville, Maryland, you're reminded that extraordinary items are sometimes found in unremarkable places.
We're always finding new and interesting things.
This climate-controlled environment houses millions of treasured artifacts from America's past.
This is a Marine Corps hat.
Writings, records, and artwork from National Park Service sites in the D.C. region, like Ford's Theater and the Frederick Douglass Estate, are carefully preserved and stored here when not on display.
These objects all tell a story, and it's a very powerful experience to work with these objects.
But the bulk of this cavernous depository of history was actually amassed by you as a thank you.
So everything in these boxes has been left at the wall.
What you're seeing is not open to the public.
We're out on we call it the floor. It's artifact storage. And the blue boxes that you see right in front of you are where we store the Vietnam collection.
The Vietnam collection. Just let that sink in for a moment. Sorrow, struggle, brotherhood, and bravery. Rows and rows of towering stacks soar nearly to the ceiling here. For more than 30 years, curators and technicians like Janet Donlin have been meticulously cataloging the hundreds of thousands of items left behind by those visiting the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in nearby Washington.
There's countless stories in these boxes.
There are tributes and reminders.
So these are all POW MIA bracelets.
There are keepsakes that catapult you back to that tumultuous time.
It counts down from 365 all the way down to 1.
One veteran left his daily countdown calendar.
Here it's man has landed on the moon.
There are hellos to heroes and unintended goodbyes to sons.
A generic happy birthday card, but she received it back in the mail, verified deceased, returned to sender.
Only a day after Air Force Major Leonard Niskey's mother sent her son this birthday card in 1967, Niskey was killed in action. She kept that card for more than 25 years before it was placed at the wall. Park rangers have been picking up and keeping items placed at the wall since 1984. Their routine, like clockwork. At nightfall, they pick up the pictures and packages left behind.
And some people put a lot of effort into what they brought out here, and it all has meaning.
And from here, they end up in one of those blue boxes at the warehouse. To give you a sense of size and scope, curators and technicians have cataloged some 450 of these blue boxes. Believe it or not, they haven't even opened another 1,000. This massive stockpile of offerings varies from the routine
It is one of a kind.
to the remarkable,
We call it the Hero Bike.
including a custom-made machine like no other.
The largest, heaviest, and kind of most significant piece that we have in our collection.
The Hero Bike honors the 37 men from Wisconsin listed as either prisoners of war or missing in action.
It was left at the wall in 1995 by this group of veterans. They're part of Rolling Thunder.
They rolled that year 900 miles from Wisconsin to the wall, pulling a trailer loaded with that handcrafted chopper. They left that bike at the wall to be consumed by history as a symbol of devotion to men left behind. Each man is represented by a dog tag, inscribed on the seat, "Bring 'em home or send us back." This hog has never been ridden. It can't until all 37 men come home. There are few places on the American landscape as revered as the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. The wall, simple in its power, is not political. It doesn't need to be.
It symbolizes sacrifice.
Hiding behind a sloping hillside, this black granite monument, gleaming like a mirror, pays tribute to the more than 58,000 lives lost in a conflict that still haunts a nation. And every year, millions gaze upon the cherished, chiseled names of the fallen.
It brings you closer to your lost loved ones.
Here, we reflect on a sorrowful past and, for some, a still painful present.
You want to go down to the E13 wall?
It's become a tradition for Ed Holterman.
With this panel right here,
to return to this very spot at the wall every Memorial Day weekend.
as a Vietnam veteran, rolling thunder is the sound of that big plane dropping all that bomb. You can hear it.
But for nearly 50 years, Holterman could not bear to be here, to walk the cobblestone path, to face an old friend he believes he disappointed so long ago.
I knew these guys. The one guy saved my life, and he's here.
Holterman says during the war he had too much to drink one night and could not work the next morning. The man who replaced him on that mission was killed.
I wanted to say I was sorry. I have had, for all these years, a lot of guilt, a lot of anger, a lot of just general disgusted with myself and everything that happened.
Holterman recently left his original Vietnam veteran's ball cap at the wall for that comrade.
Well said.
To dull a pain that will likely never fully recede. Other more unique items find their way here and then to the warehouse, so parents can share with the world a part of their soldier's story that's far removed from the blood-soaked battlefields of Vietnam.
So I cataloged this recently after discovering it in a box, and I thought it was odd because of how heavy the box was, so of course I had to look into it and see what was inside of it.
Roller skates, and not just any pair from any body.
Terry Lee Moore, a Vietnam veteran killed in action, May 6, 1968.
Moore won nearly 100 trophies and medals in competitive skating.
There's also a free skating ticket that was left with it.
Before leaving the carefree world of the rink for the jungles of Southeast Asia.
You can look on the wall and see the name, but you don't really know anything about the person until you see the story. It's kind of like piecing together a puzzle.
This wondrous gathering of memory also sits beside profound sadness. These shelves hold so many reminders of soldiers who can no longer speak for themselves. But we found one small item hidden from the public for a generation that tells a young pilot's story in his own words.
So this is a 1/4 inch magnetic reel. It contains actual vocal recordings from a person who served in Vietnam. This was made by Robert Prine.
Well, hello. How is every little thing on the home front? I am in Bravo Troop, 1st of the 9th Cavalry, and I am presently in An Khê, Vietnam.
Rob Prine grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida.
The ones that are colored are definitely originals.
His younger brother Rick says life with Rob, the oldest brother, was never dull.
It was a crazy household. There were 6 siblings, and my mother was on her own. She had been divorced.
Rick says Rob willingly took on the role of surrogate father in the family, and when war called, Rob volunteered. Before leaving for Vietnam, he made a promise to his sweetheart Sandy Yeager. They decided to get married when Rob returned.
Well, I heard from my brother Rob that, hey, when I get back, Sandy and I are going to get married, and we're going to have kids, lots of kids.
Rob's connection to family ran deep.
These are postcards that Rob sent home.
He corresponded with loved ones every chance that he could get while heading into harm's way. But what Rob Prine shipped stateside next is now a part of our nation's history.
And he sent it to a Miss Sandra Yeager in Atlanta, Georgia. We actually recently had this digitized, so I was probably the first person to listen to his recording since it was left at the wall in 1989.
Prine made reel-to-reel tape recordings while in Vietnam.
Well, hello, y'all. I figure I'll send you some words here.
It's late January 1968. Prine is based out of An Khê, the largest helicopter base in the world at the time.
Hotel 49, looks like that's landing.
An Khê also served as a critical transportation and tactical hub for U.S. military operations.
I'll go forward Monday, I believe, either Monday or Tuesday, and that's to our area of operation, and that's where I guess we start the war.
On only his 20th day in Vietnam, this 21-year-old crashed the helicopter he was piloting in foul weather.
I went ballistic. I could not control myself because he meant so much to me and the rest of the family, and he was gone.
For years, Rick dreamed of a scenario never to be, that his resourceful brother had somehow survived that crash.
Of course, that didn't happen, but you always want to hope to see your brother again because he was special.
The tapes arrived stateside soon after Rob's death.
They loved each other tremendously. I was devastated, but Sandy was doubly devastated by his loss because they loved each other so much.
Let you go, now you lose yourself. Baby, you don't need me, baby. Let you go. Be good, Sandy. I miss you. Bye-bye.
The Prine family made sure that Rob would live on in others. Rick named his son after his brother. His sister Mary did the same. When Sandy Yeager married, she also had a son. That young man, during an 8th grade field trip to Washington, D.C. in 1989, placed those recordings at the wall so Rob Prine's story of devotion to family and to country could live on forever. Only 3 days before Rob Prine arrived in Vietnam, the infamous Battle of Khe Sanh erupted to the north. This engagement would prove to be among the longest and the bloodiest of the war. In the first hours of this ferocious siege, 19-year-old Private Jerry Elliott with the 282nd Assault Helicopter Company volunteered for what proved to be a dangerous rescue mission. According to first-hand accounts, helicopters headed to a barren mountaintop in search of wounded. Upon arrival, enemy fire hit the lead chopper, which erupted in flames and crashed. Survivors say Elliott hit the ground to aid crash survivors, but was soon surrounded. That's the last time Jerry Elliott of Greenville, Mississippi, was seen alive.
The helicopters who had landed to help with the rescue mission pulled away, and they left men on the ground, one being my uncle.
Janet Cilio, Elliott's niece, says when helicopters circled back several minutes later, her uncle had vanished.
And everyone was gone. There was no one. The casualties were on the ground. Everyone disappeared. No one knew, like, where did they go? Where did they go?
Cilio, who now lives in Reston, comes often to the wall to pay homage to a man who meant so much to her family.
This is an uncle that I've never met, but I absolutely love and adore. I mean, his sacrifice for me, you know, the freedoms that I'm able to experience because his name is on that wall. It's not just the name, it's a person. You know, someone who people love. And the fact that this is all that we have of him, this is it.
Jerry Elliott's remains were never found. But something else, something remarkable, did eventually come home, thanks to a sister who refuses to give up on her brother. If there's an item at the warehouse that symbolizes the unfailing commitment to MIAs, it may be this one.
This is a part of a helicopter blade.
And not just any rotor blade.
It's a piece of history from, you know, directly from the site, from the era. This can't be replaced.
The spellbinding story behind this blade is one for the ages.
So she started making trips back and forth to Vietnam.
31 years after Jerry Elliott disappeared on that hilltop near Khe Sanh, his sister Donna arrived in country with a team of experts in search of anything connected to her lost hero.
These are all pictures of Jerry Elliott. This one specifically is a picture of the Joint Task Force that went in 1999 to try and find his remains. His sister is right here. Her name is Donna Elliott.
While interviewing villagers, they discovered that a farmer years ago had salvaged parts from the very helicopter that crashed moments before Jerry Elliott disappeared.
They found some local Vietnamese who knew of what happened at the time. They told the crew about this guy who was using a helicopter blade that he had found as a fence post in his cow pen.
Task force members bartered for that rotor blade and brought it home. On Memorial Day 2000, Donna Elliott and surviving members of that fateful rescue mission came to Washington. They placed that rotor blade in a pine box that was draped in an American flag. And they left it at the wall so that the only link to a life lost was assured a final resting place in history.
To get too steep because we're going to break straight out right over the ocean.
Last time I saw this aircraft was crashed in the jungle 46 years ago.
Roger.
There is a reality of war that most combat veterans cannot escape. The repercussions of battle result in invisible scars that embed in the bones of soldiers.
Look up Gary first.
Yeah.
How's it
done? Is it alphabetically? Yeah. Alphabetically.
D-U-D-A-C-H.
For Aircraft Commander Walter McNeese and door gunner Ralph Tutrani, their historic trip to the wall.
And you know what I've always noticed when you come here? How quiet it is.
Yes.
Reminds us that with a bit of luck and a lot of faith,
Could very well have been our names on that wall.
you can begin to heal wounds deep and wide by honoring your fallen brothers in arms.
This project has helped me so much with maybe just coming to grips with it.
This project, so improbable, began nearly 50 years ago with a call for help near the town of Tay Ninh, 100 kilometers northwest of Old Saigon.
It has a serial number 174, and it was shot down on Valentine's Day in 1969. It was a medevac unit. It was going in for a rescue, and there were 5 on board. There was a pilot, a co-pilot, crew chief, door gunner.
The Huey and its crew came under heavy fire while trying to save fellow soldiers.
49 will stay on station.
Leaking hydraulic fluid, low on fuel, so it had to make a forced kind of a crash landing in a hot zone.
The helicopter landed at an angle. Crew Chief Gary Dubach and Stephen Schumacher jumped out to set up a perimeter, only to be hit and killed by the rotor blade.
You know, a lot of families were destroyed when these guys were killed.
Those families and those survivors have struggled in the decades to follow.
I have PTSD, very bad, and this mission was probably at the top of the list for causing that.
But out of that darkness has emerged an unlikely light. A man connected in no way to that mission recently made an astounding discovery in a remote helicopter boneyard.
So we found this at Show Low, Arizona, which is up in the White Mountains of northeast Arizona.
Retired Army Sergeant Dave Barron runs a nonprofit that supports combat veterans grappling with PTSD. A couple years ago, Barron searched randomly for a battle-tested helicopter to restore. His idea: rebuild a Vietnam-era Huey in a way that helps combat veterans talk about the silent fight burning inside them.
It's more satisfying than I can even describe.
Barron determined after months of research that this old helicopter was the very Huey that crashed in Tay Ninh back in '69. He found the relatives of those who died, like Gary Dubach's sister, Carol Hewitt.
I never would have thought that I'd see it again or see it at all because it got shot down. I figured it would be in Vietnam.
And then Barron, with the help of veterans organizations, tracked down crew members like Ralph Tutrani.
I got off the phone and I turned to my wife and I said, "You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe what I just got off the phone and listened to."
Then renowned artist Steve Maloney went to work, transforming that air ambulance into a spectacular 47-foot-long sculpture designed to inspire dialogue and healing.
What were they thinking about? Well, they were thinking about probably most likely their girlfriend or their car, or maybe something simple like Mom's apple pie. And they wanted to get out, for sure. They wanted to be back home.
This piece, called Take Me Home, Huey, now tours the country. During Memorial Day weekend, victims' relatives and surviving crew members gathered at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Virginia, where the sculpture was on display.
I can honor my brother now. And if I can honor him, that's what I want to do.
But there would be one last mission on this day to close a significant circle.
Maybe this project will say, you're home now. You can let go.
An original section of the Huey's door panel was removed so that it could be left at the wall.
Oh, it's down at the bottom, 19 west. Okay, it's on the bottom right corner.
Oh.
They eventually found their old friends.
Gary Dubois.
During a short ceremony, they presented a part of that Huey to the Sisters of the Fallen.
This is the panel of the aircraft that has been restored, and we would like to give it to you ladies in honor and remembrance of Gary and Stephen. And we'd like to go ahead and give this to you now.
We're honored to accept this, and I hope it will be a treasure for every name on this wall, because they all gave the same amount as our family members.
Right.
And as Laura Anderson with the National Park Service walked away with a part of that old Huey in her hands to place in the country's archive, we are once again reminded of this memorial's timeless power.
I know he's only one on this huge number of people, but I'm just so happy that he's going to be appreciated for what he did. He made the ultimate sacrifice.
Maybe in a way, the wall is actually a reflection of ourselves, all we've seen and all we've learned in one nation's collective effort to better honor and to better treat the men and women who serve, fight, and die for our freedom.